The bandwagon effect of cognitive bias. The goal of this experiment was to investigate whether the bandwagon effect is present in election scenarios as dictated in a previous study. The bandwagon effect can be defined as the tendency individuals gain that cause them to believe things because a great number of individuals believe it as well. This ideology is most commonly existent in elections and voting scenarios. This theory underwent a study by the Journal of Media Psychology, where they took a comprehensive look at the bandwagon effect and how influential polls really were, voiced Romeo Vitelli, PhD, where he followed on to claim that the influence polls had on public opinion was powerful and therefore defined the votes people decided on. The initial experiment that researched the prevalence of this effect did it through looking at political polls and voting that took place. It was majorly thought by many that the bandwagon effect disrupts and changes the opinions of the public. My prediction for the outcome of this experiment was that polling information would act as a powerful force when voters make their decisions on which candidate they would vote for, as opinion polls can have a powerful influence on undecided voters. Another line written by Romeo Vitelli, PhD, also illustrates the idea that polls shape the view of the public through the influence on the majority of people they represent. This belief was also one that I expressed when making my hypothesis, because polls represent the opinions of many people when making the final decision and when casting the vote. There is little reason why your choice should conflict with the majority of the populace. Due to the polls showing the image of a majority of individuals backing a candidate, this would only lead to the individual's opinions being shaped by what the polls show, and therefore the decision that will be made will be the same as the one a majority of people believed in, consequently demonstrating the bandwagon effect in play. Another reason that backs up the idea that polls have a great influence in a voter's decision can be seen within a paper titled Liebenstein's Bandwagon Effect as Applied to Voting, written by Charles E. Zeck, PhD. This paper voiced the benefits the voters would experience that would cause them to mirror decisions a majority of people made before them. This benefit is the desire on the part of the voter to be associated with the winning candidate. These thoughts the voter would have about following a majority's beliefs would result in an inevitable win, which would also be another way that proves polls have a great influence on the opinions and views of the people. This also adds to my idea that the influence polls generate derives from the power polls have with the amount of responses they get, therefore representing the views of many people, causing the person who votes wanting and needing to make the same decision as a majority of the people have made. The goal of this investigation was to replicate a previous experiment that was conducted by a psychologist. So for my experiment, I carried out the same procedure they did, which was when participants were asked to choose which candidate they would vote for, candidate A or candidate B, and they were also given additional information, like the candidate's reputations or poll information, depending on the condition they were put under. Those were the variables we changed to test if the participants would be influenced by it or not. We tested 30 participants from Singapore American School, and each was placed under a different condition. 10 participants were put under condition 1, where they were given poll information that highlighted candidate A was in the lead by a majority of votes, and then they were asked hypothetically, if they were voting, which candidate they would vote for. In condition 1, the results were 70% were swayed by the polls and chose the person that was dictated by the polls that a majority of the people had chosen. Also, the next 10 participants were put under condition 2, where they were given poll information that showed candidate B was ahead by a majority of votes. Then they were also asked which candidate would get their vote. The same scenario can be seen in condition 2, when the results show that 80% of the participants chose the candidate that the poll showed was chosen by a majority of people. Finally, the last 10 participants were put under condition 3. They made the choice on which candidate they would vote for with no poll information given. Their choice was purely informed by the reputation of the candidates, and the results for condition 3 were 4 participants chose candidate A and 6 participants chose candidate B. From the results, we recorded whether they were influenced by the poll information or not when making their decisions regarding who they were voting for. My investigation replicated a past experiment whose results showed polling information had a powerful influence on whether or not a candidate would win. So through my experiment, I wanted to find out if the bandwagon effect still existed in voting scenarios. The sample size of my experiment was 30 participants, which is quite disparate to the original experiment, which was conducted on 765 individuals. With a limited amount of trials, it meant that an accurate conclusion could not be made. Other limitations I faced through this investigation would be the fact that the scenario I created for my experiment was not a real one. It was a fictional event that the participants had to conjure up, which may contribute to why people could have been either more influenced by the polls or less influenced by the polls than they would have been if it was an actual real scenario. The way I can add to the field after conducting this experiment is through what my results show. My results show that the participants were heavily influenced by the polling information they were given. These results not only add to the field, but it also agrees with what already exists in the field, as the field previously showed the same conclusion I ended with: the compelling influence polls have on voters. However, I'm also adding to the field in the way that even through hypothetical and fictional scenarios, the influence polls have on a voter's decision is great. This consequently also shows that in hypothetical situations, the bandwagon effect still continues. From looking at what my results prove and how they add to the field, we can say that the information in the media acts as a compelling force that influences and shapes people's opinions and decisions. After knowing this about people, this could be beneficial for people in the way that they will be able to predict the winner of the next election from looking at polling news. But this also could be used in a negative way, in which people will make decisions based on what they want. Their decisions will be based on what a majority of individuals want. This experiment that I conducted shows the importance of the bandwagon concept.